On the fifth day, I had the shortest distance to cover during the Trans Siberian Expedition, just about 460 kilometers between Ulan and Irkutsk. The first couple of hours of the drive was very bumpy, and the road conditions could only improve a little bit thereafter. But I forgot all that when I caught the first sight of Lake Baikal, the largest freshwater lake in the world in terms of volume. The lake is fed by almost 330 inflowing rivers, with the Selenga being the biggest contributor. It was also the deepest lake in the world, with the bottom of the lake at 3,900 feet below the sea level. Lake Baikal is also referred to as a rift lake because the Earth's crust was slowly being pulled apart in that area. The lake is surrounded by mountains, some of which are fringed by snow even during the summer. The more than 200 kilometers of the highway that skirted the lake was an experience I will perhaps never ever forget. After checking into the Metrushka Hotel, I spent a couple of hours exploring the city in light rain and windy conditions. The Moscow Triumphal Arch is believed to have been constructed in 1813 to commemorate the decade of accession to the throne by Alexander I. A short walk from the Triumphal Arch was the Cathedral of the Epiphany, which stood tall and proud facing the Angara River. The gigantic Our Lady of Kazan Church is a sight to behold, with its salmon pink walls and fluorescent turquoise domes. On top of the domes are gold-plated crosses. The site can be seen from a fair distance away. When I entered the church, I was a bit confused whether I was a tourist or a worshipper. I was scheduled to drive nearly 1,100 kilometers on day 6 of the Trans Siberian Expedition, from Irkutsk to Krasnoyarsk. For most of the way, it was a single carriageway, and there were a lot of roads under repair and construction was underway in many places. About 120 kilometers short of Krasnoyarsk, I was waved down by a traffic squad. The young constable showed me the radar gun that had clocked me at 97 kilometers per hour. I was passing through a village which normally has a speed limit of 50 kilometers, and somehow I had missed the sign. To tide over the situation, I had to summon all my acting skills. The opening gambit, of course, was I am from India and driving alone by car. I was not prepared for the quick effect on the traffic constable. He smiled and asked me to get back on the highway, to the utter consternation of his colleagues. The young girl at the Sofitel Hotel reception, Ulan, offered to take me around the city by foot to show me the places of interest, such as the left bank of the Yenisei River, the theatre square, and many other places of interest in the nearby vicinity. Anton Chekhov had famously described Krasnoyarsk as the most beautiful city in Siberia. During the walk with Ulan, I understood why he thought it was. On day 7 of the Trans Siberian Expedition, I covered over 800 kilometers from Krasnoyarsk to Novosibirsk. I had two interesting experiences during the drive to Novosibirsk. The first was when I was stopped by a police squad to check the papers of the car. The police officer was so apologetic about his English skills that he made me sit beside him in the car and examine the papers and wish me luck to resume the journey. The second instance was in Novosibirsk. I was scheduled to stay in the Edelweiss Hotel, which I could not locate after searching high and low. People in the neighborhood told me that the hotel had been closed 6 months prior to my booking. I was in a panic, but soon I found an alternative in the city center in Novosibirsk. After a huge breakfast at the Mullins Park Hotel, I set course from Novosibirsk to Omsk a distance of 665 kilometers, on the 8th day of the Trans Siberian Expedition. In Omsk, at the CCCP restaurant where I had gone for dinner, I had a huge menu, but it was completely Latin and Greek for me because it was in Russian and the waitress could not explain the dishes to me. That is when two gentlemen walked into the restaurant and I found my messiahs for the evening. Alessio from Milan said that he knew English but not Russian. Alexei, his Muscovite friend, understood Italian but not English. A complex trio we were, but in a short while we had a lively conversation going. The schedule for day 9 of the Trans Siberian Expedition was from Omsk to Kurgan, a distance of 655 kilometers. I covered that in 8 hours. As I was checking out of the hotel in Omsk, the friendly receptionist lady handed over a large breakfast pack to me, which consisted of large pancakes stuffed with sour cream, large sausages, bread, tea and coffee powder. I was truly moved by this hospitality. In Kurgan, I was advised to visit the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, the Central Park and the Klimova Street, which is what I did during the short time that I had at my disposal. Braving the light rain and the heavy wind, I visited the park, which seemed to be the place where youngsters and elders went for some peace and quiet in the bustling city. The city of Kurgan lies on the banks of the river Tobol. The walk to Klimov took me to the riverside, where I saw people fishing or generally lazing around. Back in the hotel, I went to the cafe, ordered a couple of beers, a chicken julienne, and the local delicacy, the Ossetian pie. That kept me busy for the rest of the time that I spent in Kurgan. The schedule for the 10th day of the Trans Siberian Expedition was to drive 700 kilometers from Kurgan to Ufa. When I went to the car park of the hotel to start the car, I was in for a major shock. The battery had completely drained out because I had forgotten to switch off the headlights when I had parked the car the previous evening. As panic was about to set in, the security guard of the hotel came to my rescue. He fetched his car and, using a jump starter, reignited the battery, and that helped me get back onto the road with just a half hour's delay. The highlight of the drive to Ufa was certainly stopping at the marker point, which signified the changeover from Asia to Europe. Ufa is located at the confluence of the Ufa and Belaya rivers. The region has been inhabited by Turkic nomads since the 6th century. The important streets of the city are naturally named the Lenin and Karl Marx streets. Ufa is considered to be one of the greenest cities in Russia, and my walking tour of a couple of hours provided ample evidence of that. The large city has over 1,000 streets, 22 bridges, and 6 river ferries. The city also has many heritage buildings and a great deal of architectural wealth. I was most impressed by the Seven Sisters musical fountain. My tour of the city terminated in the aesthetic environs of the Duslik restaurant. There I initially ordered a half-liter of Spaten beer, a German variety that is popular in the area. For food, I decided on chicken tukma soup, a Bashkir delicacy, and Uzbek wheel noodles. To say that the food was outstanding would be a complete understatement. Ufa to Kuznetsk, at over 700 kilometers, was the schedule for the 11th day of the Trans Siberian Expedition. Road conditions and police squads slowed me down considerably. I was stopped 4 times for checking of documents. The tightest security seemed to be after Samara, at a dam across the Volga. Even freight trucks were being checked there, with many squads working in tandem. It seemed as if they were working overtime. Between Vladivostok and Ufa, I had gained 7 hours. That is the time difference between the two cities. Moreover, at Kuznetsk, I had covered 8,500 kilometers on the Trans Siberian Highway, averaging nearly 700 kilometers per day. It was just a couple of days more to go before the Trans Siberian Expedition itself ended.